You wake up, open your phone, and before you even said, "Good morning," to yourself you've already said, "I'm not enough." You scroll through someone's vacation, someone's success, someone's perfect life, and just like that, your peace is gone. Not because you lost anything, but because you compared. Comparison is the silent thief of joy. It doesn't break in loudly. It sneaks in quietly and empties your heart while you're too distracted to notice. When we start comparing our lives to others, something subtle yet dangerous begins to happen. We stop seeing the beauty that's already present in our own journey. The human mind is naturally drawn toward what it doesn't have. We see someone with more success, more followers, more possessions, and immediately our focus shifts from abundance to absence. Gratitude fades quietly, almost unnoticed. The things that once made us smile, a loving family, a stable job, a warm home, health, suddenly seem small in the shadow of what someone else owns. Comparison blinds us not because life loses its value, but because we stop looking at it through grateful eyes. You can't see your blessings when your vision is clouded by envy. Every person's life is a unique story, written in a language only they can understand. Yet, when we compare, we tear out our own pages and try to copy someone else's script. We forget that what looks like success for one person might not even bring peace to another. You might be praying for what someone has while they're praying to have what you take for granted. That's the irony of comparison. It makes you trade appreciation for illusion. You start to believe that happiness is somewhere else, in someone else's hands, in someone else's life. But joy doesn't live there. It lives where you are, if only you learn to notice it again. When you constantly look at others, you disconnect from your own blessings. You overlook the quiet miracles happening around you every day. The sunrise that greets you each morning, the laughter of a loved one, the strength that carried you through tough times. These are treasures that comparison convinces you are ordinary. It dulls your sense of wonder and replaces it with a sense of lack. Before long, gratitude feels forced and contentment becomes impossible. You start living in the future, chasing what others have, instead of savoring the richness of the present moment. The blindness deepens until nothing ever feels enough. Not your job, not your body, not your achievements. And when nothing feels enough, happiness can never last. What we often forget is that blessings don't always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they come disguised as lessons, delays, or challenges. But comparison doesn't let you see that. It tricks you into thinking someone else's journey is smoother, easier, or luckier, while yours is flawed. It convinces you that blessings are only measured by visible success. Yet some of the greatest gifts in life, peace of mind, resilience, faith, patience, cannot be seen, only felt. When you compare, you trade the depth of your journey for the surface of someone else's. You stop noticing how far you've come because you're too busy counting how far they've gone. The truth is, gratitude and comparison cannot coexist. One will always silence the other. When gratitude speaks, comparison loses its voice. But when comparison takes over, gratitude fades away. If you want to regain your joy, you must retrain your focus. Look around you, not above you. Start listing the things you once prayed for, the ones you now treat as ordinary. Remember that there was a time you wanted exactly what you have today. That awareness reignites appreciation, and appreciation restores sight. Suddenly, what you thought was small becomes sacred again. The ordinary becomes extraordinary when seen through the lens of gratitude. You will only begin to see your blessings again when you stop looking for them in someone else's life. Every person's timing, struggle, and purpose are different. Most to the gym, comparing yourself to others is like looking at a masterpiece and complaining that it doesn't look like another painting. You were designed to express something entirely your own. When you start valuing your uniqueness, your vision clears. You begin to notice the quiet abundance that was always there, the people who love you, the lessons that shaped you, the moments that built your strength. Comparison doesn't just blind you to blessings, it steals your ability to feel fulfilled. But the moment you turn your gaze inward, gratitude opens your eyes, and suddenly, you can see again. From the moment we are born, the world starts handing us comparisons disguised as expectations. Go to school, get good grades, get a job, get married, buy a house, retire. It's as if life were a single, straight road that everyone must follow. But somewhere along that road, we begin to notice others running faster. We see people achieving more, getting ahead, and suddenly our own pace feels too slow. Without realizing it, we start to run faster, not because our heart tells us to, but because the world does. We measure our worth by someone else's progress and call it ambition. But that's not ambition, it's anxiety dressed up as purpose. When you run a race that isn't yours, no matter how fast you go, you'll always feel behind because the finish line keeps moving. Every person has a different path, a different pace, and a different purpose. Yet we keep trying to fit our journey into someone else's timeline. We compare careers, relationships, achievements, even happiness, as if all of life were a competition for who's doing better. The truth is, your race was designed with your strengths, your struggles, and your timing in mind. Someone else's path might look smoother, but you don't know the terrain they've had to cross to get there. You might envy their mountain peak without realizing how deep their valleys have been. The race you're meant to run is not about finishing first, it's about finishing fulfilled. It's not about speed, it's about direction. Running fast in the wrong direction is still running away from your purpose. Comparison tricks you into believing that life is linear, that success is a ladder, and everyone starts at the same rung. But that's a lie. Some people start higher, Some start lower, and some are climbing a completely different structure. You cannot compare your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20. Every delay, every detour, every setback in your life has a reason that fits your story. When you abandon your own race to chase someone else's, you rob yourself of the lessons that were meant for you. You might even reach their destination, but it won't feel like home, because it was never yours to begin with. The peace you seek won't come from running faster. It will come from running true to who you are. When you constantly measure yourself against others, your motivation shifts from purpose to pressure. You no longer do things because they bring you joy. You do them to prove your worth. You post, you hustle, you grind, not from inspiration, but from insecurity. And that kind of success always feels hollow. You might reach goals that impress others, but fail to fulfill yourself. The race becomes exhausting because you're sprinting for applause that never lasts. Real satisfaction doesn't come from crossing someone else's finish line. It comes from knowing you ran with integrity at your own pace for reasons that matter to you. Think about the runner who keeps looking sideways during a race. The more they look, the slower they go. They lose rhythm, balance, and focus, not because they lack ability, but because they're distracted. Life works the same way. The moment you turn your attention towards someone else's journey, you lose connection with your own. The comparison creates imbalance. The distraction creates doubt. You can't run freely while constantly glancing at another lane. You can't discover your potential while you're obsessed with theirs. The fastest way to lose momentum in life is to spend your energy competing with people who aren't even running your race. You were never meant to be a copy of anyone else. Your path is not supposed to look like theirs. Your pace is not supposed to match theirs, and your purpose is not supposed to mirror theirs. You were crafted for something only you can do. When you stop chasing the illusion of being ahead and start embracing the power of being authentic, everything changes. You stop feeling behind because you realize there's no behind in a race designed uniquely for you. The moment you honor your individuality, pressure turns into peace, competition turns into clarity, and envy turns into inspiration. You begin to understand that you were never losing. You were simply running in the wrong direction. Comparison creates illusions so convincing that they start to feel real. You see someone's perfect vacation, their smiling family, their dream job, and your mind instantly begins to draw conclusions. You think they must be happier, luckier, more fulfilled. But what you're really seeing is a moment, a single, filtered fragment of their reality. The human brain fills in the gaps with imagination, assuming the rest of their life must be as flawless as that picture. That's the illusion. You're not comparing truth to truth. You're comparing your private reality with all its ups and downs to someone else's public highlight reel. And the result is emotional distortion. You start believing their surface over your substance, and your peace begins to fade. Social media has turned comparison into a daily ritual. With every scroll, we are invited to judge ourselves against carefully curated snapshots of other people's lives. But what we rarely see are the arguments behind the smiles, the loneliness behind the luxury, or the anxiety behind the achievements. The world only shows what it wants us to believe, not what it truly is. And yet, we take that partial truth and measure our worth by it. We start to think we're falling behind, that our lives are somehow lacking color compared to the digital perfection in front of us. But the truth is, no one posts their pain. Illusions are easier to admire than authenticity, but they're also impossible to live up to. The danger of comparison lies in how it reshapes our perception of happiness. We begin to assume that joy is something visible, measurable, or material. We think it's the number of likes, the number of followers, the size of a house, the title on a business card. But those are symbols, not sources. True happiness can't be photographed. It's felt in the quiet moments of peace, gratitude, and connection. Yet comparison trains us to chase what looks good instead of what feels right. We forget that appearance and reality are rarely the same. Someone can look successful and still feel empty inside. Someone can look ordinary and live with deep contentment. Illusion sells, but truth satisfies. When you start comparing, you don't just distort your view of others, you distort your view of yourself. You start doubting your progress, your worth, and your potential. You might look at someone's seemingly perfect journey and think, they're doing better than me. But you're not seeing the tears, the doubts, the sacrifices that never made it to the screen. Every person carries hidden battles, invisible to the world. Just because you can't see their struggles doesn't mean they don't exist. Illusion hides imperfection, but truth embraces it. And when you forget that, you begin to demand perfection from yourself too, chasing a standard that was never real to begin with. Comparison also breeds dissatisfaction because illusions are endless. There will always be someone richer, more attractive, more talented, more successful, at least on the surface. If you keep chasing that illusion, you'll always find a new one to run after. It becomes an emotional treadmill, lots of effort, zero progress. You exhaust yourself trying to live up to something that even the person you envy may not truly be living. The illusion keeps you running toward mirages, things that disappear the closer you get. And while you're chasing what isn't real, you miss everything that is. The real moments, the real connections, the real joy right in front of you go unnoticed because your mind is lost in illusion. The most painful part of illusion is that it doesn't just deceive, it divides. It separates you from authenticity, from gratitude, from peace. It convinces you that your reality is inferior, that your story is less meaningful, that your blessings are smaller. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if the life you have right now is exactly the kind of life someone else is praying for? That's what comparison hides from you. It blinds you to the truth of your own value while magnifying the illusion of someone else's. And the longer you live in that illusion, the further you drift from your own truth. The truth that joy was never meant to be compared, only lived. Comparison doesn't just hurt your confidence, it quietly drains your energy, thought by thought, until you feel empty without understanding why. Every time you measure yourself against someone else, your mind enters a battle it was never meant to fight. You begin to spend emotional fuel on things that have nothing to do with your purpose. You start thinking in terms of not enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough, not talented enough. That mental loop becomes exhausting. The more you compare, the more your energy leaks out through invisible cracks. Jealousy, insecurity, frustration. And over time, that constant self-measurement turns into fatigue. You wake up tired, not because your body needs rest, but because your soul does. When your energy is spent comparing, it leaves you with nothing for creating. You become so focused on what others are doing that you lose momentum in your own life. Instead of putting your time into growth, learning, and peace, you pour it into worry and resentment. It's like running on a treadmill. You're expending effort, but going nowhere. You keep scrolling, analyzing, overthinking, and before you know it, the day is gone and you've achieved nothing that truly matters. This mental drain is subtle but powerful. You might think you're just checking in on others, but emotionally, you're checking out of your own journey. Energy is a finite resource. Every thought you waste on comparison is energy stolen from your purpose. The most dangerous part of this drain is that it disguises itself as motivation. You tell yourself that comparing makes you work harder, that it pushes you to improve. But real motivation inspires peace, not pressure. When your drive is rooted in insecurity, you might achieve things, but you won't enjoy them. You'll cross milestones and still feel restless because your mind is already searching for the next person to compare with. True growth comes from inspiration, not imitation. Inspiration energizes you, comparison exhausts you. One builds your spirit, the other empties it. If your success cost you your peace, it was fueled by the wrong energy. Comparison doesn't just drain energy, it steals your inner stillness. The peace you once felt from simple things, your morning coffee, a walk in nature, a quiet moment of reflection, starts fading away. Your mind becomes too noisy, too occupied with what others are doing. You start living in a state of mental restlessness, constantly refreshing, checking, and wondering where you stand. Peace cannot exist in a heart that is always competing. You can't hear your own intuition when you're tuned into the noise of everyone else's achievements. This loss of peace is subtle. It doesn't happen overnight. It slips in quietly until one day, calm feels foreign, and contentment feels out of reach. When peace disappears, stress takes its place. The body responds to emotional comparison the same way it responds to real danger, with tension, anxiety, and self doubt. Your mind keeps replaying the image of someone doing better, and your nervous system reacts as if you failed. You lose sleep, overanalyze your choices, and start doubting every step. Comparison isn't just emotional, it becomes physical. It manifests as fatigue, irritability, and a constant sense of unease. You can't relax when you're mentally racing against everyone you know. Peace is not something you can chase, it's something you protect, and comparison is the fastest way to lose that protection. The truth is, you cannot live a peaceful life while fighting invisible battles in your head every day. Comparison drains you because it keeps you focused on scarcity. What you lack, what you missed, what you still don't have. But energy follows focus, and wherever your attention goes, your strength flows. When your attention is on others, your strength leaves you. You begin to confuse busyness with purpose and achievement with peace. But real fulfillment doesn't come from being ahead of others. It comes from being aligned with yourself. When your energy is no longer wasted on comparison, you finally have enough to invest in growth, gratitude, and genuine calm. That is when life starts to feel lighter, not because circumstances change, but because your mind finally rests. Comparison is one of the most effective ways to suffocate your creativity. When you spend your time watching what others are doing, you start shaping your ideas around theirs. Slowly, your originality fades and imitation takes over. You stop asking, "What do I want to create?" and start asking, "What will make me look as good as them?" That shift is deadly to creativity. True creative energy flows from authenticity, from the courage to express yourself without worrying about how it will be received. But comparison replaces courage with caution. You begin editing your thoughts before they even form, filtering your imagination through the lens of what others might think. In the end, you're not creating from inspiration, you're performing for approval. Confidence and creativity are born from the same source, self-trust. You have to believe in your own perspective before you can express it freely. But when comparison takes root, that trust begins to erode. You start to doubt your instincts, your taste, your vision. You might have an idea you love, but the moment you see someone else doing something similar, maybe bigger, flashier, or more polished, you question whether yours is good enough. That doubt kills momentum. Many people never bring their best ideas to life simply because they convince themselves that someone else already did it better. Comparison becomes the thief not just of joy, but of creation itself. The tragedy is that comparison makes you forget that creativity was never meant to be a competition. Art, expression, innovation, they aren't about who does it first or who does it best. They're about truth. Your truth. What makes your work valuable is not how it measures up to someone else's, but how deeply it reflects who you are. The world doesn't need another version of what already exists. It needs your unique fingerprint, your personal story, your distinct voice. Yet comparison pushes you to sound like others, look like others, create like others. It convinces you that safety lies in similarity when in reality your power lies in difference. When comparison kills creativity, it also chips away at confidence piece by piece. You start seeking external validation for every step you take. The likes, the praise, the recognition, they become the fuel for your self-worth. And when those things don't come, you begin to feel invisible. You start asking, what's wrong with me? Instead of asking, what's true to me? Confidence doesn't grow in the soil of comparison. It grows in the soil of conviction. It's built by doing what feels right for you, even when no one else applauds. But comparison keeps you chasing applause instead of mastery. You forget that confidence isn't about being the best. It's about being certain of your value even when you're not noticed. Comparison also breeds fear, and fear is the enemy of innovation. When you're afraid of being judged, of being less, of being misunderstood, you play small. You stop experimenting. You stop taking risks. You start repeating what's safe, because failure becomes terrifying. But creativity demands risk. It requires the willingness to be imperfect, to try, to fail, to try again. The best ideas are born from freedom, not fear. Yet comparison keeps you locked in a cage of doubt, where every move feels monitored. You start to believe that your worth depends on your performance, and that belief suffocates everything that makes your work alive. The most powerful creators, thinkers, and leaders are the ones who stopped comparing and started creating from conviction. They didn't wait to be the best. They just started being themselves. Confidence blooms when you stop looking sideways and start looking inward. When you trust your instincts more than opinions. Your ideas gain strength, your voice gains clarity, and your creativity gains life. Comparison can only kill creativity if you let it convince you that your uniqueness isn't enough. But the truth is, every time you create from authenticity, you remind the world and yourself that there is no competition for what's re-won. True joy is not something you can manufacture in isolation. It often blooms when your heart is open to the happiness of others. When comparison rules, envy sneaks in, whispering that someone else's success diminishes your own. But the moment you shift from envy to celebration, something remarkable happens. Your perspective changes and your heart expands. You begin to see that another person's victory does not take away from your possibilities. Instead, it can inspire and uplift you, revealing what is possible in the world rather than what is missing in your life. The act of celebrating others becomes a powerful antidote to scarcity, a way to reclaim joy that comparison had stolen. Celebrating others without envy requires conscious effort. It demands that you Resist the natural inclination to measure your worth against theirs. You have to look at their achievements and think, this is wonderful for them, and it does not lessen me. That mindset is transformative. It shifts your focus from what you lack to what you can appreciate. Suddenly, your heart is filled not with frustration, but with gratitude for the abundance of life around you. By honoring the success of others, you create a space where your own happiness can grow unhindered by the shadow of comparison. When you celebrate genuinely, it strengthens your relationships. Jealousy isolates, admiration connects. People can sense when your happiness for them is authentic. It builds trust, deepens friendships, and fosters collaboration. You stop feeling like life is a zero-sum game where someone else's gain is your loss. Instead, you begin to understand that success multiplies when it is shared. Your joy becomes contagious, and you contribute to a culture where encouragement, not envy, drives progress. The act of celebrating others is not just generosity. It is an investment in your own emotional well-being. This practice also shifts your mindset from competition to curiosity. When someone else achieves something remarkable, instead of feeling threatened, you start asking, what can I learn from this? Curiosity opens doors. It transforms admiration into inspiration and motivates you to improve yourself without the toxic pressure of comparison. You stop chasing a mirage of perfection and start embracing a path of growth and self-discovery. The joy you feel is no longer dependent on your standing against others, but on your willingness to expand, learn, and evolve. Celebrating others reminds you that life is vast and full of opportunities. When envy is absent, you can rejoice in someone else's breakthrough without anxiety. You understand that their story is theirs and yours is yours. The success of one person does not shrink the possibilities of another, it enriches the human experience. In this awareness, your heart feels lighter and your mind feels freer. You no longer carry the burden of comparison, and in that freedom, joy naturally returns. You experience contentment not by taking away from others, but by embracing the abundance of life. Finally, when you make celebrating others a habit, it rewires your emotional patterns. Gratitude replaces resentment, admiration replaces jealousy, and love replaces insecurity. Joy becomes a default state rather than a fleeting reward tied to accomplishments. You start to see that life is not a series of competitions, but a shared journey where every person's light can shine without dimming another's. In this space, your own happiness grows stronger because it is rooted in generosity of spirit. True fulfillment arises not from being ahead, but from embracing the beauty and success of the world around you. Comparison may whisper that you're not enough, but joy speaks louder if you let it. You are not behind, you are becoming. You are not less, you're unique. And the moment you stop comparing, you'll realize joy was never gone. It was just waiting for your attention to return home.